Good afternoon, good afternoon. I'm enjoying a nice cup of Dansong Wulong in two of new cups that I purchased. Here's a look at those leaves. So I just recently came across a post um, on a channel that I follow both on YouTube and on the TikTok platforms. And obviously, they are offering the best advice to new tea consumers, people who are just getting into this method of tea making, and going over and discussing the parameters of proper brewing techniques for different tea types. Such as, sound advice is not boiling your water if you're brewing a green tea. How much leaf you actually put into your gaiwan or into your gongfu teapot does actually make a big, huge difference in the flavor of your tea. So I just added my own 2 cents in the comments, where I've been brewing in this method for going on 5 years now. And once you become actually comfortable with the parameters of how to brew your tea, it is always acceptable to be experimental with those parameters. The temperature of your water is the biggest thing. I think you can take liberties after, sufficient amounts of brewing. Once you've been around the block and tasting different teas, and you gravitate towards these particular tastes and profiles more, you have a certain taste preference, and so you begin to understand a little bit more about what you enjoy, what you like. And that's the number one thing that I always try to remind people who are entering this world of tea, especially when we have local tea tasting events at our local tea house. This is a new Jinjan piece. The glaze on the inside is actually very uneven. Well, not even, but it's. I don't know how to describe it. I went for this piece because it has a very organic feel to it. I love the oddity in the shape. It's meant to resemble the surface of the moon. So I'm calling this my moon cup, right? But I love, the organic feeling, which is why I also am using a wood-fired piece here. And that's why you see those blemishes and the unevenness of the coloration and the glaze finish. But yeah. So going back to parameters of brewing. And this is from a local ceramic artist who does very well with, excuse me, clay blending, clay mixing. So, going back to parameters, I think that once you get a better sense of your taste profiles, then you'll hear a lot of tea people, tea brewers, who are very knowledgeable, right? Oh, you don't always have to set these strict parameters and these strict rules in how you make your tea, right? A lot of people will recommend, green teas, white teas, you want to bring your temperatures down. Aged teas, you want to let them steep a little bit longer. You want to let them, get dark, and the liquor should be dark, and, the juiciness of the tea liquor. But again, that's dependent on the type of tea that you are making. Generally, it's the lighter and the fresher the tea, the lower the water temperature should be so that you are not overscorching those leaves. And the older the tea leaf is and the darker the tea liquor, the higher the water temperature should be. And generally, it is more forgiving with aged teas and with black teas. Typically, I'm not saying across the board, but typically they are more forgiving with brewing temperatures. And I commented on a friend of mine's post who is also, in the tea community. We follow one another. And I told her, I said, I hardly consume green teas because they're not so forgiving with the brewing method. And you really have to pay attention if your dedication is not there fully, if you're not in the moment, if you are not paying attention to how you are making your tea. It is very easy to brew a bad cup of green tea because the leaves are so not forgiving with regards to water temperature, with regards to steep time, because there's two parameters in how you can make strong tea, right? One is the temperature of your water. Most of the time, that's bitterness. The other thing, too, though, is how long you're letting it sit in the water. That can also contribute to bitterness, but for some teas, it adds to more depth. It adds to more juiciness. It adds to more richer flavor, bolder flavor, right? And so when you use descriptive words like, oh, it's more bitter, generally what people mean is astringent. That's what they mean, astringency, especially when it comes to dark and black teas. Astringency, I like to equate to boldness. Like how rich is the tea? How deep is the tea? How juicy is the tea? That is what astringency is. And because I'm drinking a dansong, this one is more so creamy rather than nutty. With the Wu Yi teas, with the Phoenix Mountain teas, that oolong variety, those ones are more oxidized. It's darker. You get a more coffee or nutty note with it, and that's why some coffee drinkers prefer those types of oolongs. Dansongs are more lighter. You can see that the leaves are still green, but you still get kind of like a raw nuttiness with this. More fruit, more floral notes. Whereas the darker oxidized oolongs from Wu Yi Mountain, from Phoenix oolongs, those ones are, what they refer to again. It's like it's a rock tea, right? You get that minerality. You get those toasty notes, but you can see how green these tea leaves are. And so I'm just saying, the world of tea is vast. And not only is it dependent on the type of tea that you make, the significance also lies in how you make your tea. How you make your tea. And I am convinced, and I have been convinced for a long time now, that most people hate green tea because they do not know how to properly make a cup of green tea or a pot of green tea. Green tea, white teas, they are the most sensitive leaves. And so I just wanted to share that little piece of information with you. It is not only the tea type that you taste, it is also how you prepare it, the parameters of how many tea leaves you use, or how much tea leaves you use, the volume, the temperature of your water, and the steeping time of your water. And then some people even go as far as the quality of your water. What kind of water are you using to make your tea? So I just wanted to share that. Yes, these parameters matter, but once you become comfortable enough, then you can start to kind of bend the quote-unquote rules a little bit, right? You can take liberties in saying, oh, I want to boil my water for my white tea. I want to boil my water for my green tea. And that's okay. Like you're not breaking any laws here. But just generally, you get the advice of lower temperatures for white and green tea leaves, mainly because people do not seek out that bitterness taste. And that's the main reason why a lot of people avoid raw pu'er teas. So I hope this information was helpful. And feel free to take certain, liberties with those parameters. An individual that I met at a tea tasting at my local tea house in Seven Cups was like, oh, I only drink this tea because I know that it has this particular flavor. And I'm like, well, you can kind of bend the rules a little bit. And you don't always have to have astringent tea if you don't like astringent tea. You don't always have to have bitter tea if you don't like bitter tea. A lot of people, again, say raw pu'er is bitter. It doesn't have to be if you bring your water temperature down to 185, 190 degrees, right? Versus the recommended 204, 206, 212 degree water that is like, oh, you got to boil your water for pu'er tea. You don't have to. So, take several liberties with the brewing parameters, especially with water temperature. I think that's the easiest thing to do, to experiment with, to see what you prefer. Cheers.